Now that we've been introduced to the basic principles of sustainability reporting, of triple bottom lines, and of having a more holistic view of impact, it is time to understand how all of these concepts can affect your daily work, and in particular, how they can help us evolve our understanding of the impact of MOOCs. As we've done up till now, we will continue to look at the financial, social, and environmental impacts of MOOC provision. And effectively, for us, this means a process of, first of all, identifying goals for each of these areas, and then, after we've identified goals, to actually find ways to measure progress against those goals. So, let's start by thinking about financial goals. In trying to do our cost-benefit analysis, the most important thing we need to take into account is that, by definition, MOOCs are free. Therefore, we can't really charge anything for people to follow them, and trying to make a financial bottom line can be somewhat complicated. So, to be able to offer MOOCs for free, it means that either we need to recoup the expenses from offering the MOOC through indirect revenue, for example, by tuition fees of students who continue to follow full programs with the institution. Or we need to recoup the costs by offsetting them against the social and/or environmental benefits we believe these MOOCs offer. If we're going to think about measuring our progress, though, against purely financial goals, then there are effectively just three things we need to take into account. We need to take into account the overall costs of the MOOC, and these would include things like the costs of staff teaching the MOOC, the cost of servers to run the MOOC, cost of maintenance, and so on and so forth. We would need to consider any income that would come in for the MOOC, and income for a MOOC might come in the form of a grant from your university, it might come through some sort of sponsorship, it might come through selling ancillary services such as certifications, and you'll need to take into account the indirect revenue, or what kind of revenue might your institution get in the future because you have offered this MOOC, such as the example we've already given for tuition fees. Once you put all this together, you should be able to come up with effectively a balance sheet for your MOOC, considering the pluses and minuses of offering it. If we think about the social goals, then social goals effectively mean answering four questions. First of all, how does your MOOC improve the life of your employees? Then how does the MOOC improve the life of your students? Thirdly, how does the MOOC improve the life of your immediate community? And finally, how does offering the MOOC improve society in general? Now, for educational applications, this is somewhat easier than in other areas, because education is in and of itself a public good. Therefore, by offering more education, we can effectively say that we are increasing our beneficial social impacts. So thus, the number one and most important social indicator to consider is your MOOC providing increased access to educational opportunities? And by saying increased access, we mean is it offering opportunities which did not exist to people who did not have access to them. So therefore, there's a very, very strong emphasis here on disadvantaged groups. There's a number of different ways to measure access. You can measure access by the amount of free education that you have provided. You can measure access by the number of learning hours, by the number of students, by the number of graduates. So which specific number you will use will depend very much on your context and what your institution is able to measure. Aside from access, there are a number of other indicators you might want to consider. You can look at the overall amount of knowledge created or disseminated by creating your MOOC. This can again be just purely through volume of learning created. You might also consider the licensing models under which the content is released, and you also might want to look at if you are creating courses specifically on sustainability topics, which obviously would have a higher sustainability impact overall. Finally, you might want to look at the working conditions of staff. Are staff receiving continuing professional development on how to produce MOOCs? Are MOOCs being used to give continuing professional development? And are the staff working for you under regular unionized contracts, or are they working under more flexible but possibly more insecure gig economy contracts? And how does that affect the overall benefits given to your employees by participating or offering these MOOCs? Finally, if we think about environmental goals can be summarized in two questions. First of all, does your institution enable your institution to do more with fewer resources? And secondly, does it enable your students to do more with fewer resources? And when we look at the particularities of MOOCs being a form of distance learning, the biggest saving in terms of MOOCs and the biggest way it may contribute towards environmental goals is through a reduction in travel costs. Traveling to and from institutions, especially if that involves international travel, uses large quantities of energy, and by doing this from home, we can definitely reduce that. So in looking into environmental indicators, you might look at things like where the students are based, what it would have cost them if they would have tried to come to your institution to follow those courses. You also might want to look at other indicators though, such as renewable power for MOOC infrastructure, such as how much classroom space and how much land can go undeveloped by offering MOOCs instead of building classrooms. You might also want to look at the overall environmental awareness increased thanks to MOOCs. In terms of next steps, this presentation really just scratches the surface. We have provided links to a number of resources on our website where we propose a whole host of indicators that might be used to measure your social, environmental, and financial responsibilities. Moving forward, however, we would suggest you move to the exercise that will allow you to think about and propose goals and indicators for the MOOC you intend to produce.